Curious friends, on 28 June 1914, a 19-year-old student shot and killed the Prince of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And because of this one incident, a war broke out, a war that lasted for 4 years, in which more than 2 crore people lost their lives, a war in which many ancient empires were destroyed, a war that was fought on many countries and continents. Today, we know this war as World War I. It sounds sensational, doesn't it? Because of this single incident, World War I broke out in the world. If we could go back in time and prevent this assassination, wouldn't there be a world war in the world? The reality is not that simple, friends. A war of this magnitude is due to a long and complex chain of reasons. And then there is an incident due to which there is a spark. Imagine, there is a mountain of dynamites here. And I use a small matchstick to break this mountain of dynamites. So the explosion that happened here wasn't due to my matchstick. It happened because there was a mountain of dynamites here. Come, let's understand World War I in today's video. At 7 in the morning, the bombardment switched to the French line. In 1914, the map of Europe looked like this. There was a large Austro-Hungarian Empire in the middle, which is much larger than today's Austria and Hungary. The Empire of Germany was also much larger than today's Germany. There was no country of Poland. Russia had the Russian Empire. Today's Turkey had the Ottoman Empire. Apart from this, there was the United Kingdom and France. It is interesting to know that most of the European countries were monarchies at that time. That is, there was the rule of a king. In fact, there were only 3 countries in Europe that were democracies, not monarchies: France, Switzerland, and San Marino. There are some countries in Eastern Europe like Serbia, Bosnia, Romania, and Bulgaria. These are called Balkan countries. Remember, this is very important in our story. Let's start our story with the year 1878. There was a war between the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was on one side. The Russian Empire was on the other side. It was helping the Balkan countries to separate from the Ottoman Empire. At the conclusion of this war, the Treaty of Berlin was signed in 1878. According to this treaty, the Austro-Hungarian Empire was given the right to administer the region of Bosnia and Herzegovina temporarily, but officially, this area would remain part of the Ottoman Empire. But in October 1908, the Austro-Hungarian Empire annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina, invaded it. There is a political cartoon of that time that is very interesting to watch. The Ottoman sultans are holding their hands and feeling helpless, because internal problems were emerging. There were revolutions. At that time, Bulgaria was freed from the Ottoman Empire, which you can see in the middle. It became an independent country. On the left, you can see that the Austrian king, Franz Joseph, was trying to snatch Bosnia and Herzegovina. He was trying to snatch it from the map. The country of Bosnia and Herzegovina remained under the Ottoman Empire for 400 years. But instead of freedom, another empire came and captured it. Obviously, the people living in Bosnia were very angry with this. They wanted to be free. Even in their neighboring country, Serbia, people were very angry with this. The Serbian people had not only a geographical connection, but also an ethnic connection. Actually, all these countries in Eastern Europe have a Slavic ethnicity. Many people living in these countries feel this connection. In fact, if you look at the bottom side of this map, the countries in dark blue, the people of these countries call themselves South Slavs, and many people in these countries also demanded a South Slavic nation. So Serbia complained that the Austrian-Hungarian Empire was not only invading Bosnia, but was also invading the South Slavs. Before capturing this country, the Austrian-Hungarian foreign minister had already spoken to the Russian foreign minister that Russia should not object to this. "We're telling you first that we're going to capture this country." And Russia even listened to him, because Russia wanted something else in return. Look at this map. This is the Black Sea, and below it is the Sea of Marmara. The state of Bosphorus passes through the middle, dividing Istanbul into 2. This part was with the Ottoman Empire, and Russia wanted to take it away. So Russia told the Austrian-Hungarian Empire that they would take it away and take control of it, and that they should not object to anything and take control of Bosnia. It was a good deal. But there was a problem. There were a lot of Slavic people living in Russia, and a lot of people in Russia started protesting after seeing this. How can we agree that the Austrian-Hungarian Empire should take over our Slavic people? The Russian Empire was already weak. It had to listen to its people. Despite this secret agreement, the Russian foreign minister started supporting Serbia. The year was 1909. The Austrian-Hungarian Empire looked at Germany and asked, "If we take over Serbia now and Russia interferes, will you help us?" Germany said, "Why not? We are old friends. We will help you." On the other hand, Russia asked France that the Austrian-Hungarian Empire took over Bosnia first, and when Serbia objected to it, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire and Germany were talking together about attacking Serbia. They said, "Let's fight against them together." But France said, "What does it have to do with Bosnia? Whatever happens there, let it be. I don't want to interfere." So after France's refusal, Russia quietly accepted the annexation of Bosnia. So for now, the threat of a war stopped. But then came the assassination of Ferdinand. Actually, the people of Bosnia will not sit quietly. They want their freedom. A new revolutionary movement called Young Bosnia started. It is a student revolutionary group. The Serbian people are helping them. Their purpose is to create a free country. In fact, their purpose is not only to give Bosnia and Herzegovina freedom, but also to unite with Serbia. They want to create an entire South Slavic nation. Yugoslavia? What's the name? Yugoslavia means South, a South Slavic country. Spoiler alert, it will be created later, although in today's world, it has already been created. But anyways, on 28 June 1914, the Prince of Austria-Hungary Ferdinand, with his wife Sophie, is going on a journey in the annexed territory of Bosnia. 6 Bosnian revolutionaries planned to kill him. Around 10 in the morning, a revolutionary named Kabrinović throws a bomb near Ferdinand's car. But the bomb bounces off the car and explodes on the side of the road, and people get injured. Ferdinand escapes. He cancels the meeting he was attending. He tells the Bosnian mayor, "We came to visit your city, and you welcomed us with a bomb. This is outrageous." After canceling the meeting, he decides to go to the hospital to meet the injured. On the way to the hospital, his car takes a wrong turn by mistake. When he starts turning back to go back to the right way, he realizes that he is actually only 5 feet away from a revolutionary. A 19-year-old school student, Gavrilo Princip, whom I talked about in the beginning of the video, is the same person who shoots Ferdinand and his wife Sophie, and kills the prince of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Gavrilo Princip is immediately arrested, but his age is less than 20 years, and according to the law, he cannot be hanged. So he is sentenced to 20 years for the assassination of Gavrilo Princip. During the trial, he says that he is a Yugoslav nationalist. His aim is to unite all the Yugoslavs, and it doesn't matter to him which state Yugoslavia will be part of. But for now, he wants to get freedom from Austria. Seeing this incident, the king of the Austro-Hungarian Empire becomes furious. He gets angry and starts a war against Serbia. Russia sees that Serbia is being captured. Russia goes to save Serbia. Germany sees that Russia is now going against the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So Germany goes to save the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This time, France doesn't back down, and France goes in support of Russia and Serbia. An interesting chain is formed here. It is called the Chain of Friendship. It is an interesting cartoon that was made here describing this situation. Italy was actually in an alliance with Austria, Hungary, and Germany, but Italy backed off from its agreement to support both of them, because the agreement said that if there is an attack on our country, then we can help you. But here, Austria, Hungary, and Germany are literally invading Serbia. They are attacking themselves. So we are backing off. But because the Ottoman Empire was an enemy of Russia, the Ottoman Empire goes in support of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The United Kingdom is also involved here, because Russia, France, and Britain had an alliance treaty called the Triple Entente. And this is how a big war takes place. The Great War, where all these countries come to war with each other. Later, countries like the USA and Japan joined to support Britain and France in this war. And obviously, the countries that had British rule, like India, are also involved in this war, because the British needed soldiers. So the easiest option would be that the countries where the British have colonized, the people of those countries are used as soldiers. So a lot of Indians also go to participate in World War I on behalf of Britain. So this is how World War I begins. But a very important question arises here. Why were all these countries so eager to fight a war against each other? If something like this happens today, then will there be a war between all these countries? What was so different at that time that all these countries went to war? There are four main reasons for this, friends. Nationalism, imperialism, militarism, and alliances. Nationalism here means a nationalism without liberation, a nationalism without freedom, a nationalism based on race. A nationalism based on my country is the best country in the world, and the rest of the countries have an aggressive attitude against them. Look down on the rest of the countries. When Bismarck unified Germany in 1871, he did it on the basis of nationalism. But still, Germany was a constitutional monarchy, under the Prussian monarchy. These kings and emperors took advantage. They misused it. They convinced people to go to war for their country. And here they declared war for imperialism, to occupy the rest of the countries, to take over them. Here you'd think that managing your own country is such a difficult task. Why did they want to expand the borders of their countries? Why did they want to take over other countries and raise their heads? The simple answer to this is looting. The kings and emperors used to take over other countries for their pride and power. Look at how much territory I have. I rule over such a vast area. And secondly, to exploit the resources of those areas. They used to find gold somewhere. They'd loot it and keep it in their treasury. And by the 1900s, these capitalist companies were also involved in the looting, like the East India Company. It was the East India Company that took over the areas of India and started draining the wealth of India. That's why many people call imperialism the highest stage of capitalism. That capitalists take over other countries and take advantage of their raw material and cheap labor to earn their profits. At that time, a famous capitalist, Henry Ford, who had started the Ford Company, had himself said a famous dialogue about war and capitalism. Do you want to know the cause of war? It is capitalism, greed, the dirty hunger for dollars. Take away the capitalist and you will sweep war from earth. Imperialism, friends, was not possible without militarism. These countries had to spend a lot of money on the military, so that they could take over other countries, simply by brute force. At that time, the British Royal Navy was the largest navy in the world, with the help of which Britain was able to run its imperialistic empire. The six great powers of that time, Britain, France, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Russia, and Italy, their combined military spending was around $94 million in 1870, and by 1914 it had increased fourfold. All these countries were spending a lot of money on the military. All these countries had a lot of interest in imperialism, to take over as many countries as possible, to expand their empire. And the most interesting thing is when I talk about the country, I mean the country is mostly the monarch of that country, the king of that empire. Because there was no democracy. The will of the people was not heard. Only the will of the person sitting at the top was followed. And there were very cruel kings and emperors. In Germany there was Kaiser Wilhelm II, who is considered a very cruel king. He was always afraid that France, Britain, or Russia might attack Germany. In Russia, there was Sir Nicholas II, who was not able to control his power. He was the last emperor of the Russian Empire. And the head of state of Britain was King George VI. Should I tell you an interesting fact? These three kings were the first cousins of each other. They were literally the people of the same family. The kings of three countries. Can you imagine? World War I was like the Game of Thrones. Literally. You can consider it as a family fighting. It is said that Queen Victoria tried to stop the war between these three, but after her death it was not possible. The fourth reason is alliances. In all these countries, so many political alliances were seen. In 1882, a triple alliance was formed between Germany, Austria, Hungarian Empire, and Italy. These three countries had promised mutual support to each other if any great power was attacked. A second major alliance was formed in 1907 called the Triple Entente between Great Britain, France, and Russia. The original reason behind forming these alliances was imperialism. All these countries used to occupy other countries and feel jealous that this country has occupied this African country. This country has occupied this country. Now we have to expand our empire here and there. These things were going on. What was the state of the common people in such a case? Why did the common people start fighting because of these kings? Did the people want World War I? The answer to this is mostly no. But still, the common people were pushed into this war. The first reason was that a soldier's job was for the poor. Why would a common man risk his life for the greed of a king? Why would anyone want to do this? For money. Because of the lack of employment. People who couldn't get employment anywhere else would look for a job like a soldier in these countries. If you want to fight for the security of your country, then that's a different story. But to occupy another country, to invade another country, why would anyone want to fight? Where would the motivation come from? The answer to this is the propaganda that was spread at that time. Linguistic nationalism. In the newspapers of that time, the media created an image that enlisting in the army is a noble profession. It is a selfless service for the country. Soldiers were shown as gentlemen, disciplined heroes. War was glorified in the media. For example, Britain went to the Crimean War with Russia, and because of a failed military action, 200 British soldiers were killed. But the newspapers highlighted this issue. The article that was printed in the Times in London said that the British soldier will do his duty even to certain death, and is not paralyzed by the feeling that he is the victim of some hideous blunder. It means that the top leadership took the wrong decision, and the soldiers lost their lives. Yet this was portrayed as a heroic act. The monarch of Britain appointed an official poet, Alfred Tennyson. He wrote a poem, Charge of the Light Brigade. It was one of the first poems in the world that portrays a soldier as a hero. There was another famous English poet called Rupert Brooke. His poems, The Soldier and the Dead, portrayed war and death as glorious things. He died in World War I, and Winston Churchill used his poem as a death note to recruit other people. Such warmongering propaganda was spread at that time. It was shown that going to war is a good thing for the country. I'm saying the country because the country was not a democratic country. The country was ruled by a king, and you were basically going to war for that king. But not everyone was influenced by this propaganda. There were many people who were completely against war. The Socialist Party of America, the Socialist Party of Italy, the British Labour Party, the Bolsheviks in Russia, Karl Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg in Germany. There were many other groups like anarchists and syndicalists who believed in internationalism. Some people opposed war on the basis of religion and humanity, like Henry Ford or Valentin Bulgakov. Apart from this, there were intellectuals and poets like Rudyard Kipling who were against war. He is the author of the book Jungle. Against the poem of the Charge of the Light Brigade, he wrote a counter-poem, The Last of the Light Brigade. It highlights the bad situations that soldiers have to go through during a war. Similarly, there were some poems by Wilfred Owen that showed the bitter truth of war. Poisonous fumes, wounds on hands and feet, bloodshed. If you really understand the situations that a soldier has to go through in a war, you will never see war in the way of enthusiasm. Perhaps the most legendary anti-war poem was written by Thomas Hardy in 1909, The Man He Killed. In this poem, he shows that a soldier kills another soldier with a bullet, because both were unemployed people. Those who had no work to earn some money for their family, they joined the army like soldiers. They fought for their country and came forward and shot each other. But if these two people met each other in a good restaurant in another country, they would happily sing and eat together and celebrate. These are the reasons that every soldier who fought in World War I did not come under the influence of this bad warmongering propaganda. And we saw many cases where there were many mutinies. There was a case in France where a battalion stood up and said that they were not fighting this war. In Russia, soldiers fought against their own kings. And the most interesting case is the Christmas truce of 1914. When the war was going on in 1914, it was Christmas time. On one side were British soldiers and on the other were German soldiers. They came together to celebrate Christmas on the battlefield. We were in the front line. We were about 300 yards from the Germans. And we had, I think on Christmas Eve, we'd been singing carols and this, that, and the other. And the Germans had been doing the same. Eventually, a German said, "Tomorrow, you no shoot. We no shoot." They exchanged food and started singing and celebrating, because there was literally no reason for the common people to go to war. But then they got an order from their commander to stop all this and start the war again. Then the soldiers were punished. If no one fights the war, they'd be shot down by their own soldiers. Even if someone left the war and ran away, they'd be punished. Such punishments were given to their soldiers to force them to fight the war. Eventually, World War I happened.